question is, what was one of the challenges that you faced breaking into the industry, and how did you overcome it?
I think the most basic thing is just obviously getting heard. I think that's the biggest, when you're starting out in this business, how do you get noticed? And it's drilled in our heads that you have to have a great resume. You have to have everything written on paper, but I truthfully just personally think that it's all experience. You going out and networking and learning things is the way to get noticed, in a way to actually just showcase what your real talents are. Because once you're in that building, I don't know if everyone here started as an assistant, but I started as an assistant. And in doing so, other departments were like, oh, you're able to do that, but you're able to do that as well. I never would have saw that. I would have never known that if it was just written on a piece of paper. And I think that's the biggest thing, is just trying to find a way to break through. And I really think it's through experience and just getting noticed organically and naturally versus just jamming it down people's throats with a piece of paper.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. Like I mentioned, I started off, I wouldn't say it was easy for me to break in, but my trajectory was a little bit different because I had a dad that was in the industry. So I saw what he was doing. And at the same time, I started off as a blogger. So I developed a lot of my network that way. You know, I was reaching out to artists to interview them, and that's how I developed my relationships with people at record labels. And it was only natural that, you know, I started my career in digital marketing, and as a blogger, I already showed that I can kind of build my own audience, and I was able to connect with artists in that way. So I agree with you in the fact that, like, it's a little bit, I think that you should kind of organically try to make a name for yourself. You know, it might be hard to keep sending out resumes and things like that. It's really important for you to actually hit the ground running and maybe try to start your own thing before you actually reach out to someone. Build your, you know, your reputation that way.
I agree with her because I mainly, like, me even doing A&R kind of was built off my relationships of just like knowing artists and knowing like other executives in the industry. Like, it was like when I started working with Bobby Ratty at the time, they were really like hot. They were like the biggest artists coming out of New York. So I started doing PR with them, and I did like but with like all the blogging and all the promo and all the press that I did with them, it kind of like built my PR company. So I always used to have people contact me all the time for PR, you know, like independent artists, labels. And then that like got my name like noticed with like other like, you know, labels and stuff contacting me for their artists. And like, you know, from there, I feel like it's all about like who you know and like how hard you work, and like, you know, to be in certain rooms and be around certain people. It just brings you to like, you know, you're like, you know, the right connection you're looking for.
Yeah. I'll never forget when people first originally said to take the time to actually hit somebody up. Now everyone just DMs each other, but actually ask people to get a cup of coffee. I know it sounds crazy, but that's how I've met some of the greatest people in this business. Just actually being able to say, I think I need to learn from someone who has more experience than me, and not being afraid to actually ask for that.
Yeah, I agree with the idea of like relationship building and networking, and just like having work ethic is definitely like something that will help carry you and carry your career. A lot of the like opportunities or just moments that I was afforded was because of the fact that like I worked for free for a really long time. And then when I started to get paid, like I was working extremely hard, and like however I could help, wherever I could help, wherever I could be at, like it was important for me to like just continue to do that and just really be a resource, you know. That helped a lot. I don't think it's necessarily hard to break into the industry. I just think that you have to position yourself to be of value, and how can you contribute, you know. I think that is something that's really important, just when you're trying to do anything really in life, you know, like how am I contributing to this, you know what I mean, like super important.
And I also don't feel like you should also pigeonhole yourself. When I was my first job, not at a label, I was working with entertainment lawyers. And, you know, that's not necessarily what I wanted to do. But at the same time, I knew that they had a lot of connections, and they were also Black women. So I felt like I looked up to them, and they inspired me every day. So I went out of my way to, say, hey, you guys need a MySpace. At the time it was MySpace. God, I'm dating myself. But at the time, you need a MySpace page. You need a website. You guys don't have this. You guys don't have that. They didn't necessarily ask me for that, but I was showing my value in another way to that they would help elevate me into where I actually wanted to be. So I think you shouldn't necessarily, say, hey, I have this role and I can only do this. You should kind of, if you want to do something else, show your value in that way, whether you're in that job or not.
That's a great point.
Yeah, I just want to add one last thing. Like, I know, like, naturally, like, just as people who are trying to, like, break into it or just further where they are in, like, the business, I think one of the things that we often forget is about networking on a peer-to-peer level or on a lateral level, like, of course, like, you want to network up and work with people that are in, like, higher positions than you, who are more experienced than you, and, like, that's natural, and of course that comes over time. But also, like, working with people on the same level as you who are trying to, go in the same direction with you is super important, because it's like, when you like, time is moving so fast, opportunities are coming, things are changing so fast, and it's like, when you look back, like, you'll have, like, really built your network, you'll have really built your tribe of, like, people. Like, I have, different friends, like, we were assistants together back in the day, interns together back in the day, and now they work at all these different companies. And it's like, if I ever need a resource, I could tap in essentially with people that were former colleagues of mine, or, like, friends, like, I think the relationship part and the networking part is, like, super vital to just being successful,
100%.
Absolutely. It's a great point, lateral networking. So we got a great question from someone in the audience. Samia asked, oftentimes women are asked about the challenges of being a woman in the industry. What are the benefits of being a woman in the industry, and how have you found your gender played in your favor? You like that one, Claudia?
That's a good question. Of course, like, there's, like, a laundry list of things that are hard, right? Because we're women. But, like, I feel like the things that are easy, like especially because more times than not, you're dealing with, like, male artists, and they're, like, so super emo. They're so super self-conscious. I think that, like, there's just this maternal intuition, instinctual thing. We just got this sauce that, like, you can't really, like, identify. You can't label it. And it's just a thing that women have, and it's, like, nurturing, it's encouraging, and, like, artists need a lot of that. You know what I mean? Like, there are artists who might blow up really quickly, but then there are also artists who careers might take time, and it's going to require a lot of work and a lot of development. But through that all, what do artists really need? They need to feel supported. They need to feel secure. They need to feel like they have people going hard for them who also, like, see the vision. And I think that just naturally as women, those are, like, just instincts, and those are qualities that we have. And, like, there are a lot of things that, like, we might be able to do that the men might not be able to do. Like, there's just like, it's crazy. Like women are golden.
We are golden.
I think a big thing too is that women in the industry it's just such a necessity. And it's not even to tap onto the idea that men rule the industry, whether they don't. It really just comes down to that women have a different perspective, and we all have a different upbringing. And whether we have this innate feeling to take care of one another, there's a level of detail, that we can capture. And there's a level of care that we just have when we're working on things. And, like, I think it all plays back to that just maternal, like, just we're wired that way. We're designed that way. Like, we're women,
Females, I feel, are very expressive. So I feel like when you're, like, relating to an artist and relating to people, like, you get through, and, like, they, like, have a sense of, like, you guys as women, you have a sense of understanding. So you build, like, a good relationship with artists and people around you. Because, I don't know, it's just, like, I feel like girls are more detailed, not necessarily guys aren't, but, like, girls are more detailed and more expressive. So, like, they'll connect on, like, like Claudia says, on a more maternal level, like, instinct and level.
Yeah, and we also have to remember, a lot of times we work with female artists, and a lot of the women that I work with, they would prefer to work with other women because we know more about what they're trying to do than a man would necessarily. And at the same time, we also have to remember that a lot of the music is marketed to women. Like, you're not going to ask a guy what he thinks about, Meg Thee Stallion or whatever, or you might, but for the most part, the female fan base is what we're trying to target on a lot of these artists. So I think as a woman, our perspective is very important because we can add value to different campaigns that a man necessarily wouldn't.
100%. I think it's even just tapping into the idea that when a woman walks into the room, whether you're in a conference room, you're walking into a shoot of like a press shoot, you're walking in to do press at, a radio station. When a female walks in, whether anybody wants to truthfully agree or not, when you walk in and you don't see another female in there, you have a completely different mentality of how the room is going to go. And you ultimately want to be able to lean on someone who has been in the industry, whether they have or haven't for a long time, that just can give you a different perspective than a guy coming in being like, here's the marketing plan, here's what we're rolling out, here's what we're going to do, instead of having another female actually talk to you on a real level. Once again, it's not all women have this same mentality, but majority of us have this, where we look at people with a real sense of a human connection.
Definitely. Well, we've all made amazing points. Thank you. And as we wrap up, we're going to do one last question. So what is one piece of advice that you would give young women looking to be where you are now?
I would personally say, whatever you're trying to do, go for it. I don't think there's any boundaries in what you're trying to do. People say it's such a male dominated industry. Yeah, it is, but there's so many females doing so many great things. And I feel like I started off in PR and now I do A&R. It wasn't I never saw myself doing this. And now I have such great connections, such great relationships. I meet such awesome people all the time. And you shouldn't ever doubt yourself and doubt what you can do and where you could come from. I never expected myself to work in music, do things. And it's a great industry to be in. And any relationship you build or anyone don't there's steps to it. I hear so many of you guys say you guys intern here, did all that. I wish I had more experiences of working around different people and different things. So I don't think there's anything that could really set you back, and wherever you start there's always another level to reach.
I'll go next. I'll say that this sounds super cliche, but really, when you're in the industry, you should really try to be yourself. Your perspective is yours. No one else is like you. You can always add value to something. I might have an artist who, is a woman of color. A man is not necessarily going to be able to reach that artist and her fans like I would. You know what I mean? So never try to feel like you should dim your light or, your perspective always matters, and you should keep that in mind.
Great point.
I think the best advice, at least that I could give personally, would be continue just to learn everything that you can about the industry. Whether you want to work in press, you want to work in marketing, you want to be in management, I think the biggest thing is to actually fully understand all facets of the industry, because everything is changing so fast. And we don't know where we're going to be in the next couple of years in the industry. And if we all have a general understanding of more than just press and more than just one general, me specifically in radio, I don't know where my career is going to be in a couple of years with the way that technology is changing. The only thing that I can do is continue to educate myself and connect with more people. And going back to one of the earlier questions, is I completely always encourage people to connect with one another and ask questions and, just communicate regularly with new people, because everybody can offer something. So don't be afraid to ask. Just ask it in the right way. Don't ask just for knowledge. Ask for genuine feedback versus, hey, what can you do for me, and not offer something back. Just be there to help one another. That's the biggest thing I can say.
I think I would tell a young girl, really, really, really study the game, be a student of the game, be a sponge, really spend a lot of time trying to learn and be strong, and how can you contribute, how can you be a resource to the people that you're meeting, find different ways to connect and network. And I think really just grinding, everybody remembers everything, you get what I mean? People might support you and help you later down the line because of something that a good experience they had with you, or you showed your good work ethic before in another way. I think like just really, really being about the work and really, really being about the business and like, you know, having good work ethic